Okay, hopefully we have just about everybody. I'll start with just a really quick introduction. I'm Kristin Osiecki. I'm a learning designer on the Scratch team, but I also have a background in art education, and I've worked in public schools and also all kinds of different community arts organizations. So I'm really excited to be here with you all, kind of facilitating this workshop. And I'm also here with my colleague, Chris, so I'll pass it off to you to say hello.
Yep. Hi, name's Chris Garrity. I know a bunch of you anyway. I'm a developer on the Scratch team, but before I was full-time on the Scratch team, I was a developer of the Clubhouse Village. So I have a long history with the Clubhouse. And in fact, if you were just watching Amon's presentation, when he was talking about the laptop era, that was basically my era with the Clubhouse. Back to you, Kristen.
Cool. So I would love to be able to spend the time to do introductions to everybody. I always love getting to meet folks at the Clubhouse Immersion Weeks. But given that we want to make sure you have time to create things and ask questions, we're going to kind of jump right in. Chris G will be sharing her expertise along the way, and also maybe sharing some links with you in the chat when we share things like our studio and stuff like that. We'll also be sharing them in the chat so you can grab the links from there. And the chat is also a great place to ask questions if it doesn't seem like the right moment to interject, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask questions, especially while we're kind of off creating things throughout this workshop. So that's kind of just a bit about where you'll be able to find things and ask questions. I'm probably going to spend a significant amount of time screen sharing just between the presentation and showing you bits and pieces of Scratch. So I'm going to actually pop right into that now. If anyone has any questions, please at any time, at least pop them into the chat. We will get back to you as quickly as we can. I just don't know that I'll be able to see them while I'm screen sharing. All right. So I'm gonna go right into my presentation.
Yep. Do ask questions in the chat, and I will pass them along if Kristen doesn't see them.
Cool. All right. So are you seeing awesome Powerpuff Girl? Okay, cool. I'm excited to kind of get to facilitate this workshop. I think it's a really exciting theme for young people. I think you're never too young to start thinking about social justice and what you could be doing to play a role in it. So I think whether you're working with really young kids or you're working with teenagers, it's kind of a universally important topic that people can have a lot of fun with. So I'm excited to be kind of leading this workshop. I just wanted to kind of go over basically first what we'll be doing in this workshop. So we'll get some time to do some custom artwork, and it's up to you how much you want to customize your artwork if you want to start from scratch, but you'll have an opportunity to do that. So you get to kind of design a character and bring this character to life with some basic animation. And we'll talk about storyboarding and stuff like that. I think that, initially this was going to be a much longer workshop. Because it's only an hour. I don't know how far into storyboarding and stuff like that you'll get, but I'll share this presentation with you that has some resources to help you do that and to continue your Scratch projects. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the theme behind this project is obviously social justice superheroes. And while you can totally decide to just completely generate your own superhero without referencing any, current activists or historical references. I did just want to kind of get our minds going on who we consider to be social justice superheroes and why. And I'm wondering, we won't have a lot of time to do conversational stuff in this workshop, but I would love to hear from you all who are people you admire, who you would consider social justice superheroes or activists or people who are kind of moving the needle. So if you want to just kind of unmute or raise your hand, that'd be great. And I'm happy to, I'll get it rolling while people are thinking. I, grabbed this beautiful illustration that my coworker, who's like a very famous Scratch community member, CB, did of Marsha P. Johnson, because I find Marsha super inspiring, and the work they did really, really important, especially at a time when I think she was a superhero just for being herself and being so strong at the time. But not only that, helping other people and really being a person that we look to for inspiration even years later. That was one of the reasons why I kind of included her in these images. I don't know if anyone else wants to share. And it's okay if people are feeling kind of quiet and awkward. We can kind of skip to some of the character development stuff. Whoa. Okay.
I didn't unmute fast enough. AOC was in the chat. Thank you, Fatima, as being inspiring.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. She definitely is. Thank you, Kristy. So one thing I kind of wanted to do before we jump into like kind of actually making projects and creating things is to have you all, if you can, in another window, make sure that you're signed into your Scratch account. And then Kristy will pop this link in here to our studio for this workshop into the chat so that you all can reach this studio. And actually, I realized that I kept the studio locked down, so I'm actually going to pop into the studio for a minute and set it so that anyone can add projects. We actually already started getting comments from kids on the studio, which is really sweet. But I'm actually going to, oops, I'm not signed in. Make sure that we can all add projects to this studio. And I actually don't know why I can't sign in.
Kristen, why don't you go ahead and keep going, and I will work on getting that.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we created a studio for this workshop, and one of the things that I think is really important about workshops is getting to share things. We won't get to do a lot of that in real time today, but we'll have the studio to share people's projects into so everybody can access them later. And once you've reached this studio, if you click on this project, it will take you to the starter project for this workshop. And you can click the green remix button, which you can see down here. That'll be at the top right of your screen. And what that will do, if you're not familiar with Scratch, is it will save a version of this project that you can edit and do whatever you want with. It's your version. So we'll be working from that as like a kind of base for the stuff we'll be doing later in the workshop. And if you have questions about that or challenges, definitely post in the chat and Chris will kind of help you. Cool. So the way I'm kind of thinking about this is you have base art or you can make your own art. But either if you want to choose, a figure from history, a current figure who you see as, kind of an inspiring person that you want to base your character on, awesome. If you are more interested in developing, an idea completely from scratch and thinking more about, what kind of superpowers does a social justice superhero have in order to kind of fight injustices they see in the world, and spend a little bit of time thinking. So I'm going to leave this slide up and give you a few minutes to think about who you want your hero to be, what's their superpower, and how will you represent these traits visually. And I'll give you just like a few minutes. I think I'll do, let's say it's 1:10. So let's do till 1:13. We'll keep it super quick and just jot down some quick notes, whatever comes to mind first, to kind of serve as the basis for your character. So I'll give us like 5 minutes. Also, now's a great time to ask questions.
So I never made a Scratch account before, but it is free, right? I could just make it on the spot and join.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know how the email verification works. Like, will she have to do it now, or can you could still make projects, right?
You can still make projects, but you won't be able to share it with other people until your email is confirmed. But if you want to drop your new login account in the chat when you get it made, I can confirm your email manually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That's magical. I realized that I should have had music for this, but I was like too concerned that I would just totally screw up trying to play music for you all. So I was like, that'll overcomplicate things. And now I'm really regretting it.
So are we just thinking through what our design is going to be, or I'm confused right now?
So you don't necessarily have to be thinking through your design. You could just be thinking about who you want to base your character on, what their superpower might be as a social justice superhero, and how you could start thinking through how you might represent those visually. Like, how does someone who's looking at your superhero get a sense of what they're all about?
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So it's totally fine if that was just a moment to think. If you don't have a solid starting point, that's okay too, but hopefully you've got some ideas. We're going to be using the Scratch paint editor to draw our artwork. And if Chris, if you could pop these two links, actually, I think that you all should have gotten the link to the studio, but if you haven't, hopefully that's there for you. There's also a video that you can use, but maybe we actually won't share that link until the end. So I'm actually going to pop out of this presentation and just go straight to Scratch and kind of do a little bit of a walkthrough of the paint editor. So I'm using the same kind of starter project that you all should have a copy of. And I don't know why I can't seem to sign in. Chris, do you have any guesses as to why that is?
No.
I might stop screen sharing. I mean, I've been signed in to Scratch like all day, and I don't seem to ever get signed out usually. So I'm not sure what the problem is, but I'm going to try and sign in while not screen sharing. Yeah, I just keep getting timed out and well,
You can still go in and edit the project,
yeah.
it just won't save.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing. Okay. So you see, if you're not super familiar with Scratch, you have this area here on the left that has your coding blocks. That's kind of like your blocks library where you can go grab things. I already have some code in this project. This is the code that's making this little kind of superhero figure or Powerpuff Girl style superhero kind of hover up and down this code right here. And then you can see that she's, saying something every 3 seconds and it's in a loop repeating. So this is kind of what's controlling the actual animation is these code blocks right here. One thing that's I think often missed is these 2 tabs up here, which are costumes and sound. I'll show you really quickly the sound. You can actually record your own sound, but if you go down here to the bottom left, there's a whole library of sounds that you can use for your project. Underneath the costume tab is what we call the paint editor. You'll see for this project, this sprite, or it's a character that is what we call sprites in Scratch, has a bunch of different costumes or different versions of this character. So if you want to start with one of these as your base and customize it, you can do that. You can also add another character if you go down here to the bottom right and click choose a sprite. There's a whole library of like characters and objects. If you want you could use an animal or whatever you want to start with, but if you want to choose like something that's a person, if you hit people, we've got a whole variety of characters in here. So you can pick one of these to start as a basis for your artwork too. I'm going to go back because for now I'm just going to use this kind of Powerpuff version sprite. So the paint editor has a variety of tools. I'm actually just going to delete this cape because I can kind of make a new one showing you as an example. So really, these were all drawn originally in the paint editor, not in Illustrator or another program like that. It has kind of a simplicity of tools, but they're actually really powerful, and kids use it on Scratch to make all kinds of really detailed art. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle in order to make another cape. And if I want it to be like curved, like it's blowing in the wind, I can use this pointer tool to kind of move these around. But I can add points on too that automatically give me a curve and use these handles to reshape them, which is very kind of similar if you're familiar with other art, software to the way other kind of vector software works. So you can do things like that to customize your piece, to add little kind of elements on. You can, if I grab this with the pointer tool, I can rotate it. And you'll notice now it's in front of my piece, so I can send it to the back, and I can also move things forward. And you can delete and copy and paste things. You can also group things, which is really nice. So if I kind of move this eye, you can see all it really is a bunch of concentric circles that are kind of grouped. I can also undo things if I want to put that back. So really this whole character is just made out of a bunch of kind of ovals, that have been edited to make them a little bit kind of fit together into a face or a character, but it really is kind of simple shapes. So if you are interested in using these to work from, you can work from one of these characters. I also want to show you have other options if you're an artist and you're interested in drawing things, or if you want to start with a photograph. There's actually an upload option where you can, if you save an image from the internet or wherever, you can upload it. And you'll see that, and actually, you know what, I might pick, I don't want to change my Powerpuff sprite into bitmap, so I'll grab Ben, the sprite right here. If I go back to costumes, here he is. There is a convert to bitmap, so if you have a photograph, you'll end up in bitmap mode, and this vector sprite doesn't look amazing in bitmap mode. We also have editing tools, so if you had a photograph of something, you could come in here and erase parts of it, undo that erasure. You can also kind of paint things. in different colors. So you have a variety of different kinds of drawing tools to customize artwork. You can also add multiple characters. Like I'm not, super big fan of, of having, I kind of prefer to just have one here. So I can get rid of Ben just by hitting delete and then go back to my other character. Does anyone have any quick questions with that so far? And you can unmute and speak up.
Yeah, sorry. I actually just can't find this Sprite character in it.
Sure. Are you looking to add one from the library?
Yeah.
Sure. So at the bottom right, you have this little cat button that says choose a sprite.
Oh, okay.
And you get a bunch of options here, but if you just want to go to the Sprite Library, you click the cat. So you can start with a character from the library that way. And then I said you have these other options here, which Paint will just give you a blank document to start from scratch. And then this upload option, you can upload an image to start with.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Cool. I don't know, Chris G, are there any other kind of awesome power tools that I'm missing in the Paint editor?
Actually, one thing to point out when you have the shape manipulation tool selected, so the one on the top right,
Yes.
that you can actually, if you've got a point selected, you can change it from curved to pointed. In
okay.
Just above, there's a, if you see next to the colors,
right,
there's
yes.
You can say, oh, I don't want that to be curved, I want it to be pointed.
Right, so now you have straight lines. If people can see it, I can go back. If I click this and click this curve, I can make it pointed. That's a good point if you're drawing something more angular and you don't want the curves.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, duplication. Yeah, there's, you can definitely duplicate things.
So yes, copy and paste. And you can also flip things horizontally and vertically. Definitely grouping things is really helpful, especially as they start to get more complex. Yep. Also, people are working in Scratch projects. If you could drop the link to the Scratch project in the chat, I think Chris G can add them to that studio.
So actually, you'll need to make me a curator.
I was trying to do that, but I can't.
Oh, right, but you're not logged in. Okay.
I'll try and sign in again. I don't know. It like doesn't seem to be able to.
Very strange. Okay. Oh.
This is slightly embarrassing, but I often get knocked off my own wireless internet and I get stuck on the Xfinity wireless, and sometimes it's really slow, but I'm afraid to kind of go changing it now while I'm in the middle of a Zoom meeting. So it is what it is. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try closing this window. I mean, that shouldn't make a difference, but of course I'm like logged into my Scratch account 100% of the time, and the one time I'm not like logged in, it's during a workshop. Cool. So I'm going to give you all some time to like continue working on your characters. I'm going to kind of screen share and draw, or I don't know, Christy, if you want to screen share and draw, that's also cool. Feel free to ask questions. There are actually some other tools that I didn't go over, like you could add a gradient to, like if I wanted to give this character a cool ombre hair, you can kind of change the colors in the gradient. So you can kind of do some fun things that way. There's also kind of a trick where if you delete one color out of a gradient, you can kind of make things that are transparent, which probably not as great for hair. But if I wanted to like maybe give her awesome sunglasses, like she has some sort of x-ray vision, I can do shift and make a circle. And I can also make the weight of this line a little bit heavier.
And yeah, please do pipe up if you have questions, and I can help answer Scratch questions, how you make things work, how to change things, especially if you have questions about what blocks you might be using for things.
Yeah, one other thing that's good to notice is when you have different tools selected, the options up at the top change. So I often kind of go back to the up arrow at the top left, like the selection tool. See if I can make these look somewhat normal. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Maybe I will give her cool goggles instead. Oh, and Chris, did you share the tutorial that shows people how to make a kind of Powerpuff Sprite from scratch?
That was the video one? Yep.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
I can post it again though.
Oh. Only if you think you need to. I mean, I don't know that you all want to do that now, but because I think we're just going to spend maybe another 5 minutes on this. But it's there for you if you want to use it later, and it also probably be a great resource for kids if they want to use it. I don't know. This goggle situation is definitely not working for me. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I want to mention too, which we will probably get to later, is you can also draw your own backdrop. So if you are not feeling this background image, you can change this backdrop and also use those same paint tools to create your own background.
When you draw a line, how do you bend it again?
I think you can add a point to it.
Oh,
So if you saw, I'll do it again. I actually don't use lines a lot for whatever reason. So if I draw a line, then I can go with the line tool, then I can go grab this tool here at the top right and add a point to it wherever I want to, and then bend it that way. Is that what you were looking for?
That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Oh, one thing that I think is kind of helpful is actually making skin tones can be really hard in Scratch, and it's kind of counterintuitive. So I'll talk about it for a minute now, just in case it's helpful. I usually, basically what you have to do is make a really desaturated orange because we have the kind of hue, saturation, and brightness sliders. So it's not always the most intuitive. What I will usually do is like set this to like, I think 6 is usually the number that I go for. And then I can change just how intense that brown is with the saturation. And then, change how dark or light the skin tone is with the brightness. It can be kind of frustrating for kids sometimes if they're trying to draw a character from scratch and they can't make a skin tone. Here you're starting with base artwork, so it's probably easier to mix a brown when you have a brown already. But it is just good to kind of know how to do that if you're working with kids and they're trying to create people sprites. And so I'm going to switch over to talking a little bit about animation. It's okay if your character is not finished. Another great thing about Scratch is no matter what stage your artwork is in, you can still animate it and you can go back and edit things, which I actually think is a kind of real strength to it compared to some other animation tools. Is that you can always you can change the animation without having to redraw the characters. And you can change the character without kind of messing up your animation, which is really nice. So I've gone from the costumes tab to the code tab. And for this project, they wanted to make this character look like it was flying. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. They have the background moving, like those kind of like white squares on top of the blue to make it look a little bit like the character is flying. And then they have this code here that is kind of has the character bouncing up and down. And this kind of, I think, is maybe not the most intuitive stack of code. You can see the change Y by 1 and it's repeated 10 times. So basically that's making the character go up 10 times and then making the character go down 10 times. And the reason why they've used a loop here is just because that actually makes for a smoother animation than just having it go 10 steps, which would just make it jump really quick. And the reason why it says change Y instead of go up or down is because there's kind of like an X and Y axis, and you can see the kind of coordinates for where the sprite is changing as it goes up and down here. So this is the Y and it's going up and down. I might actually decide to, for now, I'm gonna remove this chunk of code. You'll see now if I hit my green flag, that character is no longer moving. But I might actually say, why don't I add, I'm going to try a new event block. And what an event block does is it just tells your code when your code is going to trigger, like what kind of input or what interaction is going to cause your code to run. And I'm going to do a when the sprite clicked just to have something fun and interactive. And then I'm going to go into the motion category of blocks and pick a glide to random position. And I'm going to just kind of click my sprite since this says when the sprite clicked and see what happens. So now every time I click this sprite, it glides somewhere random. So sometimes it goes a long distance and sometimes it doesn't go very far. I can also change the speed at which it glides. Like, so now it's gliding 1 second to whatever that random position is. But I could have it go 5 seconds, which we'll see what happens. So now it's gliding really slow. I could also have it go 0.5 seconds if I wanted to go much more quickly. So that's kind of a fun way of building in kind of a little bit of interactivity that is kind of triggered by you touching the sprite. And I think, or clicking on the sprite. It also should work on iPads and touch screens as you click on the sprite, which is kind of nice. You can also be more intentional about the way your sprite moves. So I think the kind of simplest or like quickest way to get your sprite moving is just a plain move block. So this block here is telling the sprite to go to the very center of the screen when you click the green flag, which is kind of like Scratch's play button. And this move 10 steps block is kind of just telling I can click here and see it'll just move 10 steps every time I click that. I don't know. I'm going to add maybe let's at least 50 so that you can actually see that change better. So now every time I click the green flag, it's going to go to the middle position and then just move 10 steps. Let's see. I don't know. Chris G, do you have any exciting suggestions for great ways to animate this character?
You could also, so one of the other things would be the original code was changing it to go up and down.
Mhm.
There are other things to change the looks. So you could change the size.
Mhm.
So it gets bigger and smaller.
Yeah, actually, that's a fun one to do. I always like, so when the sprite clicked, instead of changing that it's going up and down, I can actually just pull out these blocks and then add change size by 10. And then to make it get smaller again, I can do change size by -10. So now let's see what happens. Well, so 10 might be, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't need this forever loop anymore. So we can take that out of there. That was too much. I also think maybe 10 was more of a size change than I wanted. So I can make that number smaller. And this is actually a good time to, like, maybe I want this character to grow and then say something. So I can grab this say block, which came from here also. And I can actually change the whatever phrase, you can change the phrase to anything you want, and you can change the timing. So now if I click this, it's going to grow and say something and then shrink again. I'm not sure I'm liking that order. So the nice thing about this is that you can really kind of play around with how your animation works pretty quickly. And just kind of see how the ordering of your block changes how your animation works. So that's kind of some simple animation you can do and some ways to add text, which here, this say block is what's creating that speech bubble that pops up. If you want, you could, I actually created these little sprites for, and I hid it. So I can, if you see this kind of button here, you can hide and show things that if you kind of just saving it off to the side. I could have, I could actually show you a quick trick for, oh, we're at 140. So actually, I can show you a quick trick that will also help you later on when you're kind of creating a little bit more complex animation. So I've got this character who, and I'm going to kind of actually get rid of some of these blocks, and actually, it's nice that these kind of descriptions are here, but right now they're kind of in my way, so I'm going to close them. Right now, when I click this character, it enlarges and then says this phrase. If I want clicking that to trigger something to happen with another sprite, like I could change scenes and have it change the backdrop. And actually, maybe I'll do that instead of this. So I'm actually going to delete this beautiful backdrop. So I clicked over here to get to my backdrop. So that we no longer have that kind of background animation happening. I'm going to hide this and show this actually. I'm going to go to the backdrop library and choose a backdrop. And I'm going to pick colorful city. And I'm actually going to move the code from the backdrop because that's what's making it animate right now. So what happens is I have one backdrop, and if I want to change scenes, I'm going to add a second backdrop. Let's see, I'll pick the desert. So now we have two backdrops, and I can add code to my backdrops too and say, okay, when I want this like animation to start, it's going to start in the city. I don't want it to start in the desert. So when green flag clicked, I can go to the looks category and say switch backdrop to colorful city. That way, every time I kind of start my animation, it starts in the colorful city. Then I can go back to my sprite, and if I say, okay, every time she, I click the sprite and she says her thing, then I want her, the backdrop to change. I want my scene to change. I can go to the events category, and when I have, I want to broadcast a message, and I'm going to make a new message. So what broadcasting does is it allows two blocks to talk to each other. So I'm going to call this change scenes. So now every time I click this sprite, it's going to run through this animation and then broadcast this message. My backdrop is actually going to receive this message. And when it receives this message, so I'm going to use this block to kick that off, it's just going to change the backdrop. And so I can say switch backdrop to desert. So now I'm going to click play. I'm going to just click on my character sprite. It says this thing. It broadcasts its message, and now the scene has changed. I don't know, Kristy, do you have any great ways for explaining how broadcasting works?
Since we use a theater metaphor, I think of it as stage direction. So it's different. It's kind of like the stage manager or the director saying, okay, change, next scene, exit stage right, stage left, and go to the next background. Different from like saying something, so it's like it's the stage manager, not an actor saying something.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions either about the animation? Because I kind of feel like I ran through some things a little bit randomly, or even like the paint editor.
The questions, yes, but because I've noticed in Scratch, there's more than more than one way to animate sprite or even a scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just find one way that works and then explore that in one dimension and then build on that as you gain knowledge, because I've animated characters with costumes, like changing individual costumes, and I've animated through like a frame rate before. Yep. So it will depend on, one, your knowledge of Scratch, then your experience on how you want to animate it and what look you're desiring to have. That's really what animation is about. What are you trying to accomplish and what look are you desiring to have? Have that down first and then talk about how you want to present that character in the scene.
Yeah, you brought up some really good things. Thank you so much. And I'm sad I can't see your face, or I don't even know your name because I'm screen sharing, which is a bummer. But you brought up some really good points that I should mention. So here they've used the costumes to like give you character options, right? But I can pick another character from the library, and you'll see that as I scroll over them, like this bear walking starts to animate. And some of these other things also start to animate as you scroll over them. So if I open this bear also has multiple costumes, but instead of using them to give you different characters, they're slightly different versions of the bear that allow you to animate the bear walking. So if I move the bear down here, and this is kind of just an example of how you could animate something, I can do, let's see, when the green flag clicked, I'm gonna go into, well, first I'll get a next costume block. And so you can see every time I click next costume, the bear takes a step. And if I wanted to have the bear kind of do that on its own rather than me clicking it, I could go into the control category and say, let's do repeat 10 times. So let's see what this looks like. So kind of fast. I can now add like a wait block just to slow that down. And I think I'm going to do just 0.3 because I don't want it to be too slow. Maybe I'll even make that a 0.2. So now you've got this bear that's walking, kind of looks like he's on a treadmill. And I'm actually just going to throw a forever on this so he'll keep going. And the other thing I could do to make this bear look like it's actually going somewhere is I could also have it move. I could use a move block and have it move. Let's see, I think I can do it this way. We'll see. Maybe that needs to be like 5. So now you can slowly start to see the bears like walking off the screen. So this is really a true combination of, you know, animating using costume changing and animating using code together. So you've got these costumes that it's cycling through using that next costume block. And then you've got the code that's making that kind of slide across the screen and actually change costumes. So it's a combination of the two. So thank you so much for that point. Does anyone else have any questions?
I would actually add that there's other ways to use that too, in the sense of a lot of this, especially the vector art is, as you were showing, are made up of different shapes. So you could basically copy something like, say, one of the arms and take it off the original character, but then just move the arm to do and to animate, say, waving. Without actually having to do multiple costumes. It would basically be make the arm into its own sprite and have it move independently.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's kind of advanced techniques because getting it to look right is a little challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried the Facebook Internet of the Week back in 2019, and I had a small group. We had an hour to work with, and I was very unsuccessful at it because I was teaching concepts that I think they needed to sort of understand the space and understand what they're trying to accomplish visually. And that translates to what tools you'll use or how things will happen. Because it's a bit much when the costumes are multi-layered, multi-tiered when it comes to animation. And then you have the X, Y, and possibly the Z axis you were working with, when you're talking about shrinking and growing things. So it helps to really start them at a base case with one way to animate one thing, and then we decide what type of scene they're trying to create.
Yeah. That actually kind of leads perfectly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, is actually like when you're doing this sort of project, like an animation project with kids, is like, I really and truly would, spend time, designing characters with kids if I was going to do this project, and have them either, research historical figures or really think about what's inspiring to them to design their character first. And then I would actually have them storyboard before even going into Scratch. I mean, obviously this is a 1 hour workshop, so it's hard to, kind of recreate that experience, but I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about storyboarding while using Scratch. So one thing you may have noticed now that you've spent some time using Scratch is that it's not like, if you're editing a movie in iMovie or something like that, there's not a timeline. So it can be a little bit counterintuitive. And I think it's actually really nice to have kids do a little bit of a storyboard before they get into Scratch, especially if they've never used Scratch before. So they can think through their story and sketch it out and think about what scenes they need to tell that story, and kind of really design things out. Not necessarily as high fidelity as the example I have here, but to kind of really think about storytelling that way, instead of getting caught up on, the coding aspect and having that, maybe feel limiting. They can really kind of come up with what their story is going to be before they start coding. And then you can even, like I've created, and I'll share this with you, but, there are other templates out there online that are similar. If you create this storyboard, you could use that to kind of go frame for frame and figure out what your action is in that frame and what kind of your code would be to make that action happen. And then when you get into things like having to do your scene changes, like we were using those broadcast blocks and things that are more complicated, it allows you to kind of say, okay, cool, I know what my animation is supposed to be. What kind of blocks do I need to make that happen? So that's kind of one reason why I kind of feel like storyboarding is super helpful. And I also find that anytime you give kids more space in their creative process to really think about things, they end up, I think A, with a final product that they're more proud of, but also B, kind of digging in more deeply and thinking about things like, character design, composition, what they need to tell a story, really thoughtfully. And I think it leads to an outcome that they're more proud of. But that's kind of just been my experience, teaching things with kids. So I definitely highly recommend storyboarding. I don't think it's something that people necessarily do with Scratch, but I think especially if you're earlier in your use with Scratch, or you have kids who are new to Scratch, having them kind of generate a story first and then dig into coding and creating digitally is kind of a really great way to scaffold that process for them.
Definitely. But I would also say it's great to also make sure that they're open to changing things up when they get into it and realize that maybe they can't figure out in Scratch how to make something work exactly the way they thought they were going to have it work, without, or maybe they could do it, but it would just take a lot more time. But sort of like embracing the process and saying, okay, that's not going to work. Let me try doing this other way, and just sort of being ready to experiment, and not feel like they're somehow missing something if it doesn't exactly match the storyboard. I think it's great. I actually do wish they spent more time, that sometimes I work with kids and they or spend more time planning, but then again, there's also just that embrace the chaos, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balance, and I do think that like the first Scratch experience, definitely dive right in, because I mean, as you've seen, what you experimenting with things is how you're learning how to use them, and that's so much more impactful than like having someone explain how a block works forever, which I think is something that makes it challenging to do these things in Zoom, because rather than me knowing if you're experimenting and figuring things out, I have no idea what's going on the other end of your screen. So it's harder not to rely on explaining things.
And we have several projects in the studio at this point.
Cool. I don't know, Chris, do you want, can I stop sharing, and then do you want to share some stuff from the studio?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I do that? Yep. Is that the one? That's the one. All right. So let me bring you on that screen. So people see my screen now? Cool. And I guess if you are not in the studio and just want to share a link in the chat, you can do that. So I'm just going to play through them. This is Chandler Clubhouse. We have a team. You want to say what your idea was here for whoever this was?
Sure. So I love the Powerpuff Girls growing up, and they were also a pretty easy art style to replicate in the Scratch tools. So I using the model of three heroes coming together, I wanted to pull out two very big titans of the community that would be recognizable, which is MLK and Cesar Chavez. The screen is blank, by the way, for us, but I pulled out Cesar Chavez and MLK, and then the idea was that I use myself as a way to say that I am changing the world one step at a time, as a way to get kids motivated to do something like this.
Okay, let me try doing that again.
Well, I mean, it builds suspense because now I'm super interested in your project.
All right. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I have no idea what happened there to make it stop.
So
there we go.
It's just them flying away, like it was what I was trying to do, but I was also trying to do it really quickly. So
yeah, no, this is great. All right, I'll see what else we can get into. We have Untitled. We have just a couple of minutes, so we'll go quickly. If whoever's this is would like to say what they were thinking.
Yeah, this was just a learning experience for me. So just playing around with the tools. I tried to mess around with the sound too.
So yeah, that's one thing that's probably unfortunate. So everybody else is going to have to go to the studio. I'm looking at the wrong screen because the people are over here. You're going to have to go to the studio to hear the sound because I'm the only one getting the sound effects. So definitely, that is great. All right, and this is Fatima.
Hi, so obviously I'm a beginner. my clip art was, I really tried, but I was kind of going with the theme of like Powerpuff or like cartoons, so I picked like Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, so I kind of was just like, okay, a brown Hermione Granger, but I am a beginner, so it's very it's not the best, but yeah, that's my project.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I would say that's actually another thing is, being willing to learn alongside your members and, model the learning process as much as anything else.
All right, so I'm using built-in assets here, and the idea behind this superhero was that this female sort of superhero, she can transfer karma from one person to another, depending on their bad behaviors. So sort of like if someone is like this sort of jerk and they have this sort of high status thing, someone who has great karma, but not some other thing or the high value or high status, that you can transfer those karmas to sort of even out the justice in the situation. But it was basically, I added a background, added an effect to the background and just transitioned it to there. And I clipped some wings from another asset and put it on the character to make that effect look like they're flying instead of the cape.
That was a super inventive use of those dove wings. I was like, wait a second,
yeah.
I recognize those.
That's awesome. I think there's 1 minute, so I think I might have one more. Although maybe this isn't one of us. That is one thing with like getting people. Or no, this was definitely from here. All right, and okay, I got.
You have to click the mouse. The mouse leads it around.
Oh.
Nice.
Thank you.
I love all the colors.
Yeah, this is great. Oh, I see. Yes.
So
yeah.
we have a matter of seconds and I don't know if everybody's gonna have to jump off immediately. Thank you so much for being creative and awesome and bearing with me today. It was great to see you all. I had hoped to do this workshop in person, and I'm excited for the day that we can all do things in person again.
Definitely.
But yeah, enjoy the rest of your Clubhouse conference. It was great seeing you all.
Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
And obviously, if there's any questions, let us know.